All right, good morning, Chair Postman, Member Garrett, staff, and guests. The lobby is open and the recording has begun.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. We will convene the Liquor and Cannabis Board meeting for Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022. First item up is approval of the meeting minutes from our January 5th board meeting. Is there a motion to approve those?
I move approval of the January 5th board meeting minutes.
Great, I second, and those are approved. Moving along to rulemaking timelines, looking at all our industries. Kathy Hoffman, our Policy and Rules Manager. Good morning, Ms. Hoffman.
Good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. I'm going to provide our monthly briefly rules update, and this is consistent with the semi-annual rules agenda that I filed with the Code Revisor last week, and that's available on our website with agendas from previous reporting periods. So starting on the alcohol side, we do have a listen and learn session scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. on our axe throwing rules. Though the rule proposal on that project should be presented to you on March 2nd. And under that timeline, a public hearing would be held in mid-April with a final rule package for adoption available on April 27th, on or about April 27th. On the horizon for general alcohol rules are just housekeeping and modernization project, that we're looking forward to opening this spring, that will be designed to remove duplicative and outdated rule sections and correct minor non-substantive clerical errors that happens in rulemaking sometimes. I like to call it rule hygiene, but it really will just be just a general housekeeping project, very technical in nature. Moving on to general rulemaking, Robert will be providing you with a briefing, on the electronic service rule project. So he'll be talking about the rule inquiry that he'll be offering today for your approval. Moving on to cannabis, our social equity conceptual rule drafting is coming along well, and that project is well underway. We will be concluded that drafting in the coming weeks. We're looking forward to holding an informational section on how to get involved in rulemaking on the evening of February 17th. And that'll allow anyone who's interested in participating in our rulemaking process to learn about the process, what the Administrative Procedures Act requires us to do as an agency, and the many ways that people can get involved in that process. We are on target to bring that project to you, rule proposal, on April 13th. That would set our public hearing for mid-March and an adoption date of early June, so on or about June 8th for that project. Moving on, Jeff will be briefing you on the CR 101 package concerning technical corrections to pesticide action levels as they're listed currently in WAC 314.55.108. And then on the horizon with cannabis rules, we do expect that the current legislative session will result in some rulemaking on the cannabis side. So we're holding space to assure that we have appropriate staffing levels to be able to get to that work right away. And then finally, Jeff will be providing you with a briefing on the CR 102 proposal that's scheduled for hearing today. And I wanted to offer just briefly a couple highlights before Jeff presents on his project. First of all, these rules concern cannabis product standards. They're not related to the work of the Cannabis Alliance Task Force, and that work is essentially done. And they also are not related to current legislation and progress, that's House Bill 1859, and those concern testing lab standards. So different issue there. Currently, there are 5 certified labs that can test for pesticides, and of these 3 also test for heavy metals. And that information is available on the LCB website. It's been there for quite a while, and we're happy to direct folks to the link so they can see which labs those are if they're interested in learning. And then finally, the proposal that Jeff will be speaking to does not require any producer to test up to 50-pound lot sizes. The rules set minimum and maximum standards and sample sizes up to 50 pounds. So if a tier 1 producer still wishes to test a 5-pound lot, they can. Larger producers can flex upwards to 50 pounds if they wish. So it does provide some flexibility to our producers. So that concludes my update. Happy to answer any questions before we move on.
No, although I'm glad you mentioned the bill on labs, because, we do have parallel tracks here again, like we do with other, the THC compounds bill as well. So that's interesting. Yeah. And the combination of the two really puts us in, I think, a better, place. That's the goal, right? Is that we have both certification for the labs that are doing the testing, but this work today is not related to lab certification, and the legislation is not related to mandatory testing.
It is not. The
Okay.
legislation is not related to cannabis product standards.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Chair Postman.
And so now are we going to hear from Robert on the e-service rules? Is that next? Well, there you are. So we're going to assume that's next. Hello.
Yes, you are. Good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. This brief is related to a request for approval to file a CR 101 related to electronic service and filing rules and the accompanying memorandum. The WSLCB is considering creating or amending sections in Title 314 WAC to allow us to electronically serve notice and accept documents related to license applications and appeals. RCW 660830 grants authority to the board to designate the manner of notice. Establishing rules for electronic service and notice should improve efficiency within our agency by creating a standard operating procedure across all divisions. This will, in turn, enable us to streamline our business and adjudicated processes. So if approved by the board, a rule project team consisting of members across multiple divisions will convene to draft conceptual rules. If approved for filing and all goes accordingly, here's the high-level tentative timeline for this project. So today, the CR1 is filed with the Office of the Code Revisor and the informal comment period begins. Internal and external LCB websites are updated and a notification regarding the filing is sent to stakeholders. On March 30th, the CR 102 would be presented to the board to approve filing proposed rules. On May 11th, I have an audience here. On May 11th, a public hearing will be held. On May 25th, the CR 103 would be presented to the board to approve the adoption of rules, and on June 25th, the rules would go into effect. So that concludes the brief on this rule project. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. No questions for me. Member Garrett, anything before we take a motion on this? Okay. And then is there a motion to approve the CR 101 for electronic service and filing rules?
This is Ali. I move board approval of the CR 101 for electronic service and filing rules.
Great. And I will second. So it is approved. So Mr. Spain will keep you on that timeline then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And now we will hear from Jeff Kildall, the Policy and Rules Coordinator on the cannabis side. Morning, Mr. Kildall.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. This morning, I would like to request your approval to file a CR 101 proposal statement of inquiry to allow for possible rulemaking to amend WAC 314-55-108 regarding marijuana pesticide action levels. This rulemaking is needed to update pesticide variety information in WAC 314-55-108, update rule language regarding remediation of marijuana that has failed quality assurance testing, and amend rule language to change the term quality assurance testing to quality control testing. This possible rulemaking would protect public health and safety by keeping pesticide action level information and remediation guidelines current. And if approved today for filing, we would tentatively bring a CR 102 to you for consideration on March 30th, 2022. I would like to ask your approval to file this CR 101 today. Thank you, and may I answer any questions?
The only question I have is there any, so this is in conjunction with what we're going to hear in a minute, which is the bigger testing rulemaking. Is that correct? We need both these things.
Yes, it is. Part of it is updating just some information about the individual types of pesticides, and the two changes that are consistent will be made to be consistent with the quality control testing rules are the terminology of changing quality assurance testing to quality control testing in this section.
Yeah.
And also updating the guidance for when marijuana may be remediated.
Is there any timing concern, or what might we end up with our overall testing rules in place without this update in place? And if so, is that a problem, or will they catch up to each other at some point and both be effective in generally the same time?
Yeah, well, I anticipate that the quality control testing rules will be completed first, and then this will follow shortly after. And this change will just help WAC 314.55.108 conform to the other changes. So
Okay.
It's for consistency.
Great, good, thank you. Okay, and then not seeing any other questions, then we would be ready for the public hearing. Do you have a presentation for the public hearing, Mr. Cadal, or should we just open that to testimony at this point?
I have a short introduction here that
Please.
I'll
Chair, if I can interrupt for one moment, please. Sorry, this is
Please.
Dustin. We need a motion, please, for the CR 101 for pesticides.
Right.
Oh, right, yes, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the CR 101 for pesticide action levels?
This is Ali. I move approval of the CR 101 for pesticide action items.
And I second, and that's approved. Thank you
Action
for
level.
reminding Dustin. Okay, Mr. Gildahl, back to you for the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Chair Postman. The rule proposal before you today for public hearing concerns changes to current rules that would require all marijuana products produced and sold in Washington state to be tested for pesticides, in addition to the currently required suite of I-502 tests. As you are aware, this has been a lengthy project that involved exhaustive stakeholder engagement and multiple rule proposals. The proposed rules would also allow the board to conduct randomized or investigation-driven testing for heavy metals in marijuana products. In addition to the proposed cannabis quality control testing rules mentioned above, this proposal also includes revised licensee sample collection and storage procedures, increasing the maximum amount of cannabis flower that may be represented by a single I-502 panel of tests, and revising the number of 1 gram flower samples required for testing. Excuse me. Elimination of the ability of certified labs to return unused portions of samples to licensees. Revised guidance to labs regarding when to reject or fail a sample. Updated and expanded information regarding testing levels for water activity, potency analysis, foreign matter inspection, microbial screening, mycotoxin screening, and residual solvent screening. This proposal also includes updated rule language regarding product testing, remediation of failed lots, the expiration of certificates of analysis, and the referencing of samples. And finally, this change would update reporting requirements for lab proficiency testing. We anticipate the effect of these rules will be to promote the overarching goal of the board to protect public health and safety, and to help ensure that all marijuana products sold within the I-502 system are safe for all consumers. With the recent increase in hemp-derived Delta-8, Delta-9, and other unregulated products entering the I-502 market, it is important at this time to require the addition of pesticide testing and allow for random or investigation-driven heavy metal testing for adult-use marijuana products. We want to make sure that these products are safe for everyone, and this CR21 was approved and filed on December 8th, 2021. Since then, we have received approximately 40 separate comments on the proposed rules. This concludes my introduction. May I answer any questions?
None from me. Seeing none. No, thank you. And we'll move to the public hearing. Thanks, Mr. Kildall. We have a lot of people signed up. We have 21, I believe. We're going to keep it at 4 minutes for everybody because that's what we all thought. I would urge people to be concise, to most importantly, listen for the warning at 30 seconds. You'll hear from Dustin that your time is about to run out, and then finish on time. If somebody's already said what you wanted to say, just you could give them a, ditto, and see if we can move along. We also have some people signed up for general public comment. We might have to compact that from 4 minutes a person to 3 minutes, depending on how long this goes. So just early heads up on that. Couple other reminders, the meeting's recorded, of course. We ask you to state your name and affiliation before you speak. It's 4 minutes. You'll get the 30-second warning. And we understand it always takes a second, or often takes a second, for people to get unmuted and everything like that. So don't worry, we're going to be patient. You please be patient. If you have a technical problem, we will come back to you and try again. So do that. Last thing is, I saw some hands up. We don't have the ability to answer questions online during the meetings. And so you're going to have to follow up through Dustin at the conclusion of the meeting. And with that, we will open the public hearing. The first person I have signed up is Lucas Hunter.
Good morning, members of the board. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah. Good morning.
Hey, well, Lucas Hunter, representing Harmony Farms. Thank you for the opportunity to have 4 minutes to talk. I'm used to 2 minutes now from the legislature. So anyhow, I just want to say first and foremost, thank you for taking the time on this set of rules. It's been a lengthy process, but it's also a very challenging set, as we're balancing public health and safety, economic survivability for businesses and labs. So there's a lot going on there. I have submitted written testimony already to the rules and policy staff. I'll forward that to you guys as well. But ultimately, Harmony would like to see lot sizes actually decrease down to 5 pounds as opposed to raised to 50. What we see is disproportionately affecting smaller businesses and putting an excessive tax. Labs will most likely raise the cost of QA testing to a standard for a test, regardless of the lot size. What we would like to see is actually a harvest level test, where because harvest is already defined within rule, to take a representative sample from the harvest. I suggest 3 grams, just because that's what's required, whatever amount of samples that would take. And then to apply a charge for pesticide test at harvest level. I think that this would be the best way to allow for a even taxation on the cannabis industry, and it won't promote larger lot sizes. It'll promote an ability to have smaller lot sizes as well. While going through this rule set, I also have seen other pain points. One that we've seen is once you pass your mandatory QA test, an inability to retest in the form of remediating a product further. So let's say for butane, you have a ppm maximum of 5,000. Well, if you pass at 4,900, you can't further refine that product and retest it because it's already passed QA testing. While that passing test result may not meet, standards for a company. So what we would like to see is an ability for licensees to autonomously be able to retest and further refine product for pretty much everything except for potency. And this is really just to improve the product safety out there. Also, as a back end of this, it would allow for licensees to not have to pay for non-mandatory tests to preemptively see if their product meets quality standards. So those are the 2 main things. Another one is if there would be an ability for, once again, autonomous testing, retesting if a licensee were to fail QA testing. Once again, in my submitted testimony, I talk about the way that Colorado handles this, with us providing 2 additional samples from the same batch or lot, and then allowing those to go to separate labs or to be retested at the same lab. That's fully detailed out, but I think that would be a more robust system. Once again, allowing it to reside within the industry side to allow for a more rapid turnaround, as opposed to making requests to the Liquor and Cannabis Board. And once again, this is intended to further reduce the taxation of non-mandatory tests to make sure a product meets internal standards as well as state-provided guidelines. So trying to keep testimony as short as possible. I wrote a whole novel for you guys, so you're welcome. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you. We'll take a look at it. Appreciate the comments. Next on the list is Sean Dene. Sean, I just saw your hand go up, but I don't see you. You should be able to.
If I may interject for just a moment,
Please.
If the attendees that are planning on speaking, give me just a moment to track you down, and then if you raise your hand, it moves you in the list. And so once I think I found you, you kind of jump your spot. So just bear with us and be patient for just a moment. There's no need to raise hands. I will find you.
Okay.
There we go.
Eric, good morning.
There we go. Good morning, everybody. And thank you for this hearing. And I also need to give a big shout out to you, Mr. Postman, for your rebuttal that was recently published in the Tacoma Tribune. Thank you for that. Spot on. Glad to see it. When this CR 102 was represented right before Thanksgiving with the Small Business Economic Impact Study, today seemed like it was far off. Here we are all of a sudden here. We faced the holidays and the surge of Omicron and it waved through our community. Then we had the CCRS to deal with. All the cannabis bills to prepare for, the synthetic bills that just really freaked us out, took a lot of our focus, and and the other bills that are important to us, like the commission and the craft cannabis endorsement. And now here we are on a vital topic that will affect us all while we're trying to run our small businesses. So forgive that all the comments came in kind of late and hot and heavy, but that's just how it worked out. Basically, I'm a little tired and overwhelmed, and I'm seeking simplicity. So the KISS theory seems to be the simplest to me. And what I want to ask is, what if we separate the pesticide testing from the regular QA? There's no need to combine them together. What if we expand upon the third-party collection that the LCB is currently doing and sending tests to the WSDA? What would happen if we expanded upon that? And because the word on the street is Washington doesn't have any mandatory pesticide testing program, but we really do. The LCB came through my farm last fall, collected samples, sent them into the WSDA for pesticide testing. It's concerning that this rule set is still based upon self-selection. It comes down to a trust issue. We've seen that there are players in this industry that just cannot be trusted. And by creating a huge loophole for self-selection, that does not ensure that our products at the end shelves are safe. The only way to ensure that is to do robust final end product from the store shelves, taken by third party, sent to the WSDA lab, and tested thoroughly for pesticides. We already have that program in play, and I would like to keep it simple and just make that current program robust. The current CR 102 already relies upon that sort of system for heavy metals. Heavy metals are proven to be completely unsafe when consumed. So if that method is okay for heavy metals, then it ought to be okay for pesticides. We saw with the Small Business Economic Impact Statement that the current proposal would negatively affect 72% of us. I think that's That's a little low, but all the same, with the amount of tax revenue
Sean, you
that
have
our cultivators. 30 seconds. Okay. All right. I'll wrap it up. We also need to address the 5,000 ppm for the butanes, hexanes, propanes. That's way too much. Industry standard is well under 500. So let's move to a lower standard. And I also have a question about the usage of the term test samples from larger quantities of marijuana flower. The term lot is not used. So I wonder if that is meant to allow us to combine several strains that represent up to 50%. I just can't be clear. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. And I'm sure somebody will get back to you to answer that last question you had for sure. Appreciate that. Next on the list is Scott Burka.
I'm waiting to be found.
Well, we can hear you. So that's the first step.
For some reason the camera's not turning on. So I'll go ahead and just mic from here.
Okay, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and members of the board. My name is Scott Burka, owner of Full Throttle Farms in Okanagan, Washington. I'm a member of the Washington State Sun and Craft Association. We've been in business 7 years as a sun-grown craft cannabis producer. We have proactively pesticide tested at the harvest level for 7 years. I'm here today to speak against the proposed CR 102 rule related to quality control testing in its current format. As an I-502 stakeholder, I wholeheartedly support pesticide and heavy metal testing at the harvest level, randomly collected by a state agency or its contracted agent. At an industry minimum, we need to make sure all regulated cannabis material being sold to Washington retail customers is free from harmful substances. This requires a rule that tests every farm every year in order to meet the desired goal of the new proposed rule, or why do it? The current language is well-intentioned, but is incomplete for a number of reasons. In its desired scope, it doesn't address testing all farms equally. In its understanding of the actual financial impact on small businesses because of its incomplete conclusions in their CBIS analysis. In its ability to protect consumers and its enforcement across the entire industry. Why does this rule allow self-sampling selection by producers for material being tested for pesticides and not testing all farms equally? An excerpt from the actual CR 102, licensed businesses that produce only flower marked for extraction would not be affected by this rule. The LCB has a much larger responsibility to test all producers' material at the farm or harvest level, whether intended for retail or extraction. If QA pricing is based on 50-pound lot sizes, how can the loss of sellable material under 50-pound lots be quantified? Most small producers don't grow enough to fill a 50-pound lot in a year. Less than half of the labs in Washington have the necessary lab equipment to run pesticide tests. Equipment which would require a steep learning curve and time to become experts in the use of. This fact alone should cause us pause as we consider these proposed rule changes. We are just not ready. In other rule language, it suggested that producers pass on increased testing costs in the form of higher prices to retailers. Have you guys met our retailers? Not likely to happen. The CBIS study was based on 10-pound lots and not 50-pound lots. Testing labs were not included in CBIS, and proposed cost increases to address 50-pound lot sizes could be substantial. Therefore, it should not. It cannot be used for rulemaking in its current form. Proposed solutions. We understand the pressure that Washington State and the LCB are under to address pesticide testing in the I-502. I agree we need to implement proper rules that fairly address and equally spread the costs across the entire industry. But for now, we still need to make a living. So adding a disproportionate, non-recoverable cost to our small businesses because of a hastily thought out remedy or rule is unconscionable at this time. Don't implement a rule based on a CBIS report that utilizes data that is knowingly incomplete and inaccurate. Keep QA lab tests. Keep QA lab testing separate from pesticide and heavy metal testing. Pesticide testing needs to be conducted by the LCB or an agent of the LCB at every farm to prevent loopholes in self-selection. Add language for QA testing for lot sizes for processors and increase lot sizes to 10 pounds. Thank you very much for your time today.
Great. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Next up is Mark Ambler. I can see you, but not hear you yet. Make sure both it's unmuted at the Teams thing as well as on your device, maybe. Yeah, not able to hear you.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Great.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Mark Ambler. I'm a tier 1 producer processor up in Bellingham. And I'm opposed to this rule because I don't use any of the pesticides that are on the list, the banned pesticides, and like the 5 or 6% of the approved pesticides that are on the sampling list. I don't use any of those. So to tell me to sample for those and then tell my customers that this product has been sampled for pesticides, it's misleading. And for those that have gone all the way to using just like beneficial insects or no pesticides at all, just having such a clean facility that they don't need to use pesticides, to make them sample for things they don't use and for things that you guys have checked. You guys came to our facility and checked that we don't have those things anywhere in our facility. You opened all the cabinets. So you have a program in place to keep disapproved pesticides from getting applied to cannabis in the market. I don't think adding testing for all cannabis in perpetuity really helps, and it dismotivates people from going to beneficial insects. It dismotivates people from getting rid of pesticide use, because why not use pesticides if you got to test for it anyway? Just don't use the ones that are on the list, right? So there's a lot of issues here, and there's also the legal issues. So say if we did use one of the pesticides that you wanted us to test for, and we followed the label instructions, everything's recorded, on security cameras. So we're following instructions, we're keeping records per label, and it doesn't pass the test at the end. What do we do? We can't go back to the pesticide company and be like, you guys got to change your label because it's wrong for cannabis. There's no legal recourse. So it's a really a big issue, and this is the starting point of that long, big issue. So if you fix it now, you won't have that 20 years from now where this is a huge problem. And that's essentially my comment. I'll give more time to everyone else. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today. Next up is Greg Allen.
Hello.
Hello, I can hear you, but not see you yet.
We're doing all right.
We can hear you. We're not seeing you. The same problem that we just had with Mark, I'm afraid. But if your camera's
That's
on,
all right.
Okay, great. Why don't you go ahead? Thank you, Greg.
So good morning to the board. My name is Greg Allen with Zooey's, Tier 2 producer processor out of Liberty Lake. We've been in business since August the 1st, 2014. Mostly, I'd like to echo Scott Burke from Full Throttle's comments. He's a lot more eloquent than I am. we have serious concerns around the more or less fixed testing costs per panel. The cost per panel, it's not going to change with lot size unless some guidance is handed down to allow for that. If a 5-pound lot costs the same to test as a 50-pound lot, it's going to be hugely detrimental to anybody who's not able to meet that 50-pound mark. On the topic of the pesticides themselves, pesticide testing is great. I would also echo Scott's comments that that should be handled at the harvest level by LCB agents or appointed agents of LCB. Beyond that, I have a little to add that Scott, I think, nailed it for all of us. And in the interest of time, I think I'll close off there.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next is Micah Sherman. Micah?
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you and see you.
Great.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thanks so much. My name is Micah Sherman. I'm a co-owner of Raven. We're a tier 2 producer processor here in the Olympia area. And I'm also joining you today to ask for some reevaluation of these rules as proposed. I'd like to reiterate the comments made earlier about the implementation of this significantly larger scale of testing of the 50-pound lot. Over the years, my comments on this rule set has always been that we need to start separating the individual tests and do those tests at the scale that they make the most sense. So some things make sense to do at the strain lot level. Some things make sense to do at the harvest level. Some things make sense to do at the farm level. This particular pesticide sampling, I think, could be very effectively done at either the farm or the harvest level. One thing I'll bring up that hasn't yet been mentioned is we have testing that needs to be done for disallowed pesticides that has a completely different set of considerations than tests for allowable pesticides. And right now, the rule set doesn't really distinguish between the method of sampling and the method of tracking those different compounds, which do have much different considerations and much different concerns. So I worry a bit that that aspect of the rule set is not fully developed, and it leads me to believe that we need to work more with our experts at the WSDA, which I know there's a bill going right now that's going to help with that process. And I think that we have quite a bit of work left to do here to get this right. Our organization, the WSDA, has proposed some options that could allow us an intermediary stage where we can start testing for pesticides at a broader scale and then work to refine that. I think we have work left to be done here. We do want to get some sort of pesticide testing into the system, but as it is right now, just for example, for my business, this would more than double my testing cost in the year. I don't grow 50 pounds of hardly any strains, even in the course of a full calendar year. My business model is entirely based on small batch craft cultivars. This would make it so my business model is not viable anymore. This would make it so the research and development that we do for new strains would not be viable to be able to actually do that and have it be something that we could afford to do. So this is really going to hurt our ability to innovate, to breed, to come up with new strains, and all of that work is really important. It's already very hard and difficult to do financially. Our margins are very, very slim, and this will put us into a position where we just really can't afford to do our craft business models anymore. And we need this rule set to apply equally in the compliance costs, whether you're a giant person making a completely homogeneous, highly processed product, or a small batch person that's making one-off lots. And so we need to figure out a way to make sure that these compliance costs are evenly spread across all of those different business types. And I think it's worth spending a little bit more time to get it right. And we're here to do that with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And I see that you emailed your testimony as well, so I'll take a look at that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, Jessica Straight.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, I think we can hear you, can't see you, but you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hi, thanks for taking my testimony. I'm multitasking here. I was on my headphones trying to deal with a bunch of stuff, so I just ran in my office. So anyway, I'm Jessie Straight, and together with my brother, we own Eagle Trees. It's a tier 2 producer processor up in Bellingham, near Bellingham, between Bellingham and Mount Baker. And I'm just wanting to talk about this testing stuff. Already, so many rules that have taken effect have hurt us financially. We're a really small business. We gross less than $500,000 a year, and with that, we have to pay quite a lot of costs. For example, we get about probably around 30% of the cost of our products at retail. To compare that to what the state gets is about 47% of the retail cost of the product that we work so hard to produce. That doesn't sit quite right with me, truthfully, that the state makes more money on our products that we create through our blood, sweat, and tears. That just doesn't sit right with me. And then to create a bill to create more costs for us that we have to pay is just, I think it's just ludicrous. I think that along with all the other speakers that have so far spoken, the 5-pound lot makes a lot of sense for what we're doing now for potency and whatnot. The pesticide test makes more sense on a harvest or farm level, along with the heavy metals. We personally, we don't use any pesticides at all. We use no chemicals. We use no chemical fertilizers. We use nothing. We use no products whatsoever on our products. So actually, we would love the state to test product for pesticides and heavy metals. That would allow our product to stand out in the marketplace. That would be great. And for the amount of money that our industry is providing for our state, I think we could earmark just a little bit of that, get a little group going that would go and buy product at the shops, because that ultimately is what people are buying. That is the health and safety, what people are actually buying at the actual shops. So in order to keep those products safe, I think there needs to be some kind of group through the LCB or the state or whatever that tests those products on the shelf to make sure they're safe, because that's ultimately what we all want. We want safe product for the consumers. We want safe products for the consumers because as the cannabis industry, we want to continue to create good name for ourselves, and the state wants to protect the consumers. So I think we're all in agreement what we want. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Sorry, that's my puppy. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to allow people, players to self-sample, because the bad actors are going to act badly. We all know that. So we can't leave it. we can't leave it as an honor system. We just can't, especially for pesticides and heavy metals that are actually going to affect people's health potentially. So it really needs to be at the farm level, great, and at the retail level. Secret shop, get in there, buy product, and test it for pesticides and heavy metals. It makes the most sense. And I just agree with, I agree with a lot of people that came before, and I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Thanks so much for taking my thoughts.
Great, thank you, Jesse. Jeremy Moberg.
Okay, can you hear me and see me?
Can do both. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, board members, for the opportunity to comment on what is really an impactful set of rules on the industry, and particularly on small businesses. My name's Jeremy Moberg. I'm the owner of Cannabis Farms and a board member of the WSCA. I do want to commend the LCB on the conduction of the Small Business Economic Impact Statement. This is the first time that I think we've seen a Small Business Economic Impact Statement that really dove into the impacts on small businesses. And I think its findings are interesting. I think they basically state that there is a disproportionate impact to small businesses. Some of the small business impact statement seems to rely on these larger lot sizes as a mitigation effort against that, but it actually has the opposite effect. Large companies will utilize the 50-pound lot size, and that will decrease overall testing that labs are conducting, which will result in increase in costs from lab. We've heard testimony from lab, written testimony, conversations with labs, that if the large players adopt the 50 pounds, that they will actually, in order to cover their costs, have to increase the costs on all cannabinoid testing, and that's disproportionately going to injure small farms as they cannot take advantage of the larger lot sizes. I think we all agree that we need pesticide testing, and and sooner than later. I'm hopeful that we can make some modifications in a single extension of this rulemaking that could satisfy the need for pesticide testing while acknowledging other efforts within the legislature and the fact that we're moving towards a more broad governance of this industry that is going to include input from agencies that traditionally handle these sorts of testing requirements. The other thing that the SBIS asserts is that small businesses will take advantage of these larger lot sizes, and that's just not true. And asking farms to change their practice and act like a big farm when they're a small craft producer is really not a practical suggestion. Another big issue here is that we don't have very many labs that are able to do this testing right now. And effectively on day one of this rule going into effect, we're going to lose over half of our labs. There will be no reason to send a sample to the lab that I currently work with, True Northwest, who does not have the capacity to adopt pesticide testing. I would not send them a sample only for them to package that sample up and send it to one of their competitors. And then their competitor is are they going to prioritize that sample above their own samples that they have? Thank you. So that's a big consideration. Another consideration that I really think we need to look at is there doesn't seem to be a provision for any sell-through. And this would be hugely detrimental and chaotic for the industry. As you know, I have a 50 grams of extract lot left, and I now have to go get that pesticide tested. Our solutions are varied, but the biggest one I think is that we could create a batch system, a pesticide batch system where individual lots could go together and be tested. And so we have some suggestions out there. I've also written testimony. So I thank you for your time and your consideration on this issue.
Thank you, Jeremy. Joshua Rutherford.
4 minutes, because they still fast.
Hi there, can you guys hear me?
We can, yes.
Hi there, thanks. I'm Joshua Rutherford. I own a tier 2 producer processor by myself, and I work it myself. I ought to be, truth be told, I haven't had a chance to go through these rules. I'm gonna, emulate a lot of the thoughts that have come up, but I fully support pesticide and heavy metal testing in our industry, and I think that it could be achieved in a different way. Looking at seasonal for outdoor growers, testing their soil and coming by and getting a seasonal leaf sample would be sufficient. And maybe for indoor or greenhouse cultivation, doing it per crop, rather than throwing the thing on the final product for the producer. And then also I agree with Jesse, a secret shopper program would be invaluable. I mean, we do have a ton of, excuse my language, shitty pesticide-laden product on the market. And it is an issue, and I think we need to meet the standards similar to California, because as we look forward to federal legalization, we need to be on point, or we're going to be stuck, only able to move our product within states. So I appreciate the efforts, but I think that we need to have better discussions with farmers, and really suss out the best way to approach it to be a successful program for everybody. So I'll keep it short and sweet. I'd be happy to contribute if you guys have questions. I'm involved in the industry. I'm driving back from California right now after having given a seminar. So thanks for the time, guys.
Great, thank you. Appreciate you joining us. Next up is Matthew Fragoni. Hope I got your last name right, Matthew.
Chair, this is Dustin. Matt did register to speak, but is not online with us today.
Okay, then we will move to the next Ryan Savinji. Good morning.
Now we should be good. There we are.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time to review this very robust issue. I think we see with the attendance today that there's a lot of opinions, and I think there's a lot of opinions on the same side of the table. And so I've already emailed my comments, and I'll kind of keep them short here because I don't want to continue to reiterate. But good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. My name is Ryan Seveny, and I'm the owner of a Tier 2 sun-grown farm. I'm also a board member of the Washington Sun and Craft Association and an adjunct board member of the Cannabis Alliance. And just like you've heard today from a multitude of people, I wholeheartedly support the adoption of pesticide testing. I think our industry and the patients definitely need to have peace of mind when they go to the retail stores and to know that the products on the shelves are safe. However, as you've heard, I think there is a lot missing from this rule set. I also want to commend Kathy for her diligent work on all this issues. She's fantastic. But just to kind of quickly bullet point my comments, the small business impact statement, did not consider the economic impact on the labs. They're not stakeholders. And so I think from that standpoint, a lot of the data set is skewed as we're not seeing the full picture. I think I've heard it mentioned here that less than half, 5 of the 11 labs in the state are able to test for pesticides. And I got that from the frequently requested lists on your website. I think there might be one more coming online or something, but those 5 labs are definitely going to have a large head start. And I do think that there's going to be consolidation, as Jeremy eloquently illustrated in the supply chain, if he were to continue testing with True Northwest. The small business impact survey also had assumptions based on 5 and 10 pounds and not 50. In fact, when I participated in that survey, 50 pounds was not mentioned to me at all. It was all conducted in the context of 5 and 10 pounds. Again, being a small craft producer, we don't produce 50 pounds of a single lot. We've heard Micah talk about changing business models to accommodate testing rules, and I don't think that that is a fair application of the rules. I think that we need to maybe refocus and drive some changes that I think could be accomplished in the next 30 days with an extension. Those simply are uncouple the 502 testing panel with pesticides. They can be conducted in two separate tests to achieve the same results. And then also allow the pesticide test to be handled in a manner similar to heavy metals. I think Sean mentioned it and a couple other people mentioned it as well. And that includes third-party sampling. So using an approach like this, I do think would help small farmers from realizing some devastating effects and gutting the backbone of this industry, which was developed to be craft and small production. I'll yield the rest of my time. I will just like to say I appreciated your article yesterday, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time. I did see your testimony just pop up on the inbox, so I'll take a look at that, and I promise the next time you're here, I'll get your last name right. 70.
Number in a letter. Number in a letter.
Number in a letter. 70. Okay, good. Thanks, sir. Bernard Kessler.
Okay.
Hello.
Hear me, see me?
You bet, both.
Okay. Good morning. I'm going to read this because I've got a few things I want to cover. Right. So my name is Bernard Kessler, and my son and I are the owners and the only parties of interest at Orange State Cannabis in Elk, just north of Spokane, and we are a producer processor. The rules LCB are proposing regarding QA/QC may not only not safeguard products, it will financially impact in an inequitable manner most of the producer processors in the state, very possibly put me and my 4 employees out of work. If I sound a little bit passionate, that's why. Starting with a process to safeguard products, how can the LCB ever imagine that a producer who is willing to cheat on his pesticide use reporting, either not consult the PICO list or even worse, purposely use a banned pesticide, and then wouldn't cheat on his sample collection? The grower may simply not collect the samples in the manner required. He may have untreated plants to test from, or may just go purchase flower from a retailer that has successfully passed testing. To think a pesticide cheater wouldn't do that borders on negligence. The proposed sampling process sounds a whole lot to me like folks not in the industry developing something that on its surface is a simple solution but does not lead to increasing safeguards, which we are all in favor of. As far as the cost of testing, as proposed, most farms in the state are small businesses, and many of us carry many strains in smaller quantities. Again, if the LCB had a better understanding of the industry, it would realize that almost no retailers would buy only 1 or 2 strains from a producer, as strain trends shift quickly at the retail shops. We have to keep a large variety of strains. Large lot testing only makes the problem worse, as testing labs have to charge much higher prices per test to cover their fixed costs over fewer tests, regardless if it's a 5-pound or 50-pound lot size. That's immaterial to this calculation. Again, the few large producers with multiple large lots would fare the best, and the smaller producers, never mind the smaller tier craft producers, will suffer disproportionately. And speaking of suffering disproportionately, the LCB has a social equity task force that lists one of its responsibilities as advising the governor and lieutenant governor on policies that will increase social equity in the cannabis industry, quote. Is this position just lip service? Is this just an effort to appear socially responsible? What does the LCB think the person looks like who is suffering the most from social inequity? The large business owner grower with infinitely deep pockets and multiple investors? Or is it the small-time farmer who's counting every dime to make sure he can make payroll without filing yet another $75 cannabis additional funding application? To be true to its stated social equity responsibility statement, the LCB should consider this as an opportunity to reduce small operators' costs, not increase them. I'll not be critical without offering alternatives. The Washington Sun and Craft Growers Association has close connections with growers, and primarily to those that are not the few big box growers that this proposal seems to favor. The process proposed by the WSCA addresses the financial impact inequity of the LCB proposal and solves the issue of potential sample adulteration. I'm sure you have their contact info, and if not, I'd be happy to provide it to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate if you could email your written statement as well. It would be helpful to us.
I will. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you for your time. Next up, Caitlin Ryan.
Okay, I think I'm good.
I can hear you. We don't see you, but we can hear you.
All right, well, maybe my camera will kick in. Who knows?
Okay.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank the board for hearing testimony today. My name is Caitlin Ryan, Interim Executive Director for the Cannabis Alliance. We're the largest member-driven industry organization dedicated to the advancement of a vital, ethical, and sustainable cannabis industry. I want to say thank you to the board and staff. We would like to acknowledge and express gratitude also for the dedication of industry stakeholders who have devoted significant effort in participating in this lengthy process. The complexities and history of quality assurance testing is robust, and we appreciate the multiple challenges in brokering agreement on a comprehensive rule set. And we know we will not see full agreement today. The Cannabis Alliance represents the spectrum of feedback you will hear. Many of our farmer members are signed on to the letter presented by the Washington Sun and Craft Growers Association, illustrating the depth of challenge in finalizing a fair implementation of a testing program too long delayed. Additionally, our patient and medical members continue to abandon the regulated market for more reliable product grown by their known legacy market sources due to low confidence in the safety of I-502 cannabis. Many patients conduct their own product testing with stakeholder labs to ensure their medicine is safe because there is no regulatory framework to provide guidance. We acknowledge that there are significant areas for improvement in this proposed rule set, and to that end, we would like to make a conceptual proposal. Upon completion of this rule set, we would ask LCB to take the lead on establishing a task force to proactively evaluate the impact of these rules during the first year of implementation. While we know there is a structure in place for requesting rule changes, what we are asking for is an acknowledgement that there will need to be adjustments as the impact of this significant and important shift is implemented. A stakeholder task force would provide a formal forum for problem solving in the areas of concern such as third-party testing and lot size, and it would also be a powerful advisory tool for stakeholder input and agency transparency should the interagency collaborative team be established later this year with legislation currently in session. Despite clear areas of needed improvement, the imperative for these rules to be in place still remains. We must come into alignment with all other adult use states and live up to our medical legacy by implementing pesticide testing in Washington state, and we urge you to pass these rules today. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. John Kingsbury.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, thank you for the time. My name is John Kingsbury. I'm a medical cannabis patient. I've listened to a lot of the concerns, which I appreciate, the business concerns, but I'd like to speak to the other end of these rules as a consumer. Before I list my concerns about this proposal, I need to say one thing. A lot of good work has gone into this. This is not been a simple or short task, and I appreciate staff for all of this work. Even where I disagree with some of it, the seriousness, thoroughness, and thoughtfulness of it is clearly visible. So thank you to staff for that. My highest hope for the results of this project has been that it would get us to a place where the quality assurance standards for recreational product would meet the standards for medical product. Unfortunately, these rules do not get us there. So now I may need to ask for more rulemaking from this agency and from DOH for medical product, which is down the road. So that'd be frustrating. Listening to Caitlin's idea, though, that may be an approach to address that. These are not the rules that I would have written, although I never expected that to happen. So as it stands now, these rules would not personally bring me into the regulated market, but there is a lot of good in here. In terms of quality assurance for recreational products, I think the action limits are fine. I'm okay with at-will heavy metal testing for now, unless problems reveal themselves down the road. And the number of samples per weight is a creative approach, and it would give me confidence as a consumer, I think, for recreational product. In the not okay column, again, self-sampling is an obvious flaw. My preference would be to go to a publicly funded sampling system. As a consumer, I would gladly pay extra for testing in order to get out of the illicit market. But I also recognize that would require legislative action. And I don't think that we should wait to implement some rules. I've expressed concerns about total molds. I believe the extraordinarily high levels of total molds is disturbing and making patients, consumers sick, and I wouldn't recommend any vulnerable patients touch 502 product until it is tested for total molds. Testing end product. The way I read the proposal on page 12, 4C, it says the only testing for final product of concentrates will be for cannabinoid levels. If I'm reading that right, I'm guessing the assumption here is that since intermediate product will be tested, then end product pesticide testing will be covered by intermediate testing. I think it would be terribly naive to assume that what the intermediate product is will necessarily be known. And I strongly advocate testing for pesticides at the end product of concentrate. So there's not another problem down the road. The presence of azadirachtin and other neem oil derivatives is understandably a deal breaker for many patients. My preference is that azadirachtin and other neem derivatives be prohibited from use on cannabis, but that may not be realistic, and I would simply settle for labeling. If I can know there is cow hormone in my milk, I'd be able to look at the cannabis label and identify whether there are desiccants and antifeedants in them. Product transparency should be fundamental. Having said that, we are 7 or 8 years down the road into 502, and I think it is important that we get rules into place. I don't think we should let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and I strongly recommend that the board adopt these rules and move forward from here. And I think that covers it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. Jason Paul. Have we found Jason out there?
Yes, Chair. He has the ability to turn his camera and microphone on.
Great. Jason, we might skip to the next and come back to you unless you're right there unmuting. Why don't we do that? And we'll call Jeff Newton up.
Chair, Jeff Newton registered to speak, but is not online with us today.
Okay, moving along. Make another call here for Jason Pohl.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Jason.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay, well, Jason Paul, Tier 3 grower. My farm is in Grant County, out by the Gorge Amphitheater, and Washington Sun and Craft Association board member. So I'll echo what everyone's already said, and just point out again, we're trying to employ people, keep ourselves alive, and this is very difficult. So, as a small sun growing out in the sun and indoor craft grower, it's just a huge burden. And I've seen a lot of change in the LCB and how you guys are handling things. So I'm pretty confident that you guys are going to take into consideration our issues, and, I will end it at that. Thank you for the time.
Great. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. Next up, Vicki Christofferson.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning. Hear you, see you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Vicki Christofferson. I'm here today as the Executive Director for the Washington Cannabis Business Association, testifying on behalf of our 85 licensed cannabis businesses. WACA members direct our policy priorities and have been committed since day one to safe, quality controlled and fully regulated cannabis system in Washington. I'm here today to encourage you to adopt quality control regulations. This conversation, amazingly, started 4 years ago. And after 4 years, it's safe to say that the concerns have been heard, evaluated, and reflect input from all stakeholders. There has been an ever-changing target for testing and safety, when testing and safety should be one of the most bedrock values of our system. In particular, as the industry evolves, adopting these rules underlines what should be a fundamental tenet, that cannabis products from Washington must be safe, quality controlled, and fully regulated. When we say we care about what's going into products and thus going into consumers' bodies, we have the ability to prove we mean what we say and require testing. When we say we're worried about the development of products and processes we don't understand, we have the ability to address this concern by requiring testing. When we agree that the illicit market continues to thrive and that products claiming to be cannabis are appearing outside the regulated market, we have the ability to guarantee a safe, regulated alternative. With testing, we can erase the mystery and fear, or we can identify a problem through testing and address it to protect consumer safety. After 4 years, these rules now say heavy metal testing is optional. In other words, the longer we go on, the more we drift away from the consumer, which is who should be centered in this conversation. While Washington was the first to approve adult use cannabis, at this point, we are the last to ensure testing of cannabis products to ensure their safety. We urge you to move forward with adopting these rules, appreciate the process that has taken to get here. It's long past time to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd appreciate seeing the written testimony if you have it that you could share.
We will for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Bonnie Jo Peterson.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. And I am Bonnie Jo Peterson, the Executive Director and Founder of the Industrial Hemp Association of Washington. And I am, like most, definitely want to see pesticide and heavy metal testing. And it was mentioned, that end concentrate end of things is really a concern for the hemp industry if CBD and other cannabinoids are allowed from the hemp industry into the regulated market to be added to products, since that's the only thing that is allowed, that those products are being tested with heavy metals and pesticides. And as mentioned, the heavy metals can be dealt with, at this juncture. But I do have, the feeling that there should be some cost reduction, some incentives for the small growers, whether that's some type of tax incentive or specific fees. I'm also in support of having the WSDA or, a specific agency that comes out and takes those samples, or whether it's at a point of delivery, but we do need to make sure that things are tested by labs that actually have the capability, as well as having that, fair and equitable end of things from farm level to end user. So again, I commend, like a lot of other people, the LCB, and it has taken a long time, but we're at a good place where we can make this work with more conversations, and the solutions I really believe are really going to help the market evolve with having the end consumer know what they're getting. And thank you for your time. And I do want to do the shout out to Kathy. Thank you. You're wonderful, and keep up the good work. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Bonnie Jo. Next up is Jim Mcrae.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes. Good morning.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, that worked finally. Okay, very good. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I also want to commend Kathy and her group on developing these rules. The process, this is specifically about the process. It's hard to believe that it was almost 3 years ago that we had our first listen and learn session on this. And it was indeed, I think, the first listen and learn session that we had, that the agency had had. It was a new method of increasing engagement and the breadth of stakeholder input, and it was commendable. This process has gone on quite a bit longer than I think anybody expected. I am, just by summary, not in support of the rules as they are currently written. There are probably 3 or 4 primary reasons for that. One is, and I've said this again and again in previous commentary, so I don't have written comments today, but I've said most of this stuff before. I do not believe that it is appropriate to change the naming of these rules from quality assurance to quality control. I've made that comment before, but if you even look at the purpose of the rules as written in the CR 102, you make a couple of references to the overarching goal of the WSLCB being to protect public health and safety, and to, emphasis added, assure that all products sold within the I-502 market are safe for all consumers. You get a little bit of semantic stuff going on in the explanation, trying to justify this move away from assurance to control. But in reality, I see this as a move towards shifting the bar closer to what the agency has actually been able to achieve for the past 7 years, rather than what should be. Certainly, assurance is better than control from a consumer perspective. Second concern I have is the focus on pesticides and heavy metals. That's wonderful. That's obviously been a gross thing missing from the state's product safety suite relative to the rest of the country. It's becoming more and more apparent as the rest of the country comes on board with legalized cannabis. To see pesticides now finally, years into this process, being mandated, that's great. But then now to see heavy metals go into a status they already had, which is the ability to be randomly tested or part of an investigation. The agency has always had that ability. It's not a big add here. You're basically just doing nothing new with heavy metals that I see. The failure to address the repeated concerns about how this state chose, and I believe it was 2018, to remove molds and mildews from testing, which at the time were probably the biggest single reason for flower, particularly failing tests. Just removed it. That's not a good thing. The agency's been told that dozens and dozens of times. I don't see those being added back in these rules. That is an inadequacy. And then finally, this lot size thing. I don't know where 50 pounds came from. And I'm not going to speculate, other than to say that every discussion that I have been part of, and I've been involved in most of them for the past 5 years on this process.
Jim, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Dustin. Is that the alternate was a 10-pound lot, maybe a 15, maybe a 20, regardless. The lot size increase was clearly an effort to mitigate any increased cost from this increased testing. It's a cost that every other legalized producer in the country bears. Our producers should bear it. I do not support these rules, and I really don't hope that you do not approve them as they are. We need to go forward, but not with these rules. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Next is Tinia Sasaki.
Okay, can you hear me?
You can, yes. Good morning.
All right, good morning. First of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to comment about these rules. I am the Chief Science Officer at Confidence Analytics, which is a cannabis testing lab in Redmond, Washington. And we've been testing cannabis products for almost 8 years and are one of the 5 labs that are currently accredited for pesticides. And as we all know, this has been a long topic of debate, and the legislators approved formation and funding of the Cannabis Science Task Force about 3 years ago, and the goal was to improve testing standards and quality and make it more consistent across all the labs in the state. And I've been on 5 different working groups, analytical working groups for that, to help outline the standards for the testing methods, not only to ensure testing quality, but also standardized testing. I'm here because I would like to voice my support for passing these rules as is. The original date for pesticide testing was supposed to be May 2020. We all know the coronavirus pandemic, among other things, had different plans for that. And so we've been deliberating this topic for, as mentioned, about 5 years now to get to this current state of the CR 102. As demonstrated by our early adoption, as we've been testing pesticides for about 6 years, our early adoption shows that we believe in the importance of pesticide testing to ensure clean product for the patients and consumers. I've heard a lot of discussions and concerns about smaller craft producer processors, about testing costs. Probably the majority of our clientele are these smaller producer processors. So when we look at the increase to cost, it's not going to go up 5-fold, 10-fold because of the increased lot sizes, because most of our clients are the small ones that are having these smaller lot sizes and will never reach that 30, 40, 50 pound lot size. So for those reasons, I think this needs to pass as is long overdue to ensure the public health and safety of the patients and consumers. And then finally, I would also like to take this opportunity to remind the board that the task force left 2 significant, we call them parking lot items, and they've been talked about here. And that's a third-party sampling. And I think a lot of people have mentioned that, so I don't think I need to comment on that anymore. But then also the ability for labs to obtain clean material from their clients in a bulk manner, because for testing, we do need clean matrix to match our quality controls and calibrations so that we'll get more accurate results. And currently there's not a good cost-effective way to do that. And I know that's beyond the scope of this CR 102, but I just wanted to put that out there. In closing, I'd just like to thank the board for the opportunity to present my opinions and for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Can I ask you one quick question?
Sure.
About lot size costs, which you just mentioned, but I'm trying to, and it's one thing we've heard a lot about, and I've taken some notes on that. So it seems to me the concern is that if we go to this 50 pound, that labs would just have a 50 pound kind of charge for that. Or are you saying that that's not the case, that if I came to you with 15 pounds, I'd be charged a 15 pound rate? Is it going to be one size fits all, or?
It's not, the cost is not going to scale with lot size. Okay. Because whether the cost to test a sample is the cost to test a sample.
Whether it's 10 pounds or 50 pounds, your costs are going to be generally the same, you're saying?
Generally,
okay. Yeah. Very interesting. Okay, thank you. And thanks for all the time you've put into this. I do appreciate it. That's what helped us. Thank you. Next person signed up is Dave Varshak.
Good morning, board. You got me?
I can hear you. Don't see you, Dave, but
yeah, you probably don't want to anyway.
Why don't you go ahead? Thanks.
Good morning, board and staff. My name is Dave Varshak. I'm the general manager for Full Throttle Farm in the Okanagan, as well as a complex of farms comprising multiple licenses and multiple tiers. This complex has been a contributing part of the I-502 since 2016. We proactively test our crops at the harvest level for pesticides. Our grounds are tested for heavy metals. We're an organic, sustainable farming practices farm. We improve our soils, and we absolutely pride ourselves in if we won't smoke it, we won't sell it. First, before I go any further, I'd like to kind of offer an apology to Chair Postman for some comments I've made in the past and assumptions I've made, especially based and in light on some of the media that's been present over the last couple of days. And I commend you for shining some light on some otherwise dark nooks and crannies of what's going on here. The CR 102, I'm here today to voice my opposition for it as written. One of the problems, I think, is, if I'm correct, this CR 102 has been out since November or so, and we've had the holidays in there. And while this has been a long, ongoing subject, the actual written language hasn't been around for very long, especially in consideration of COVID, the holidays and so forth and whatnot. So save a lot of time here. I have provided my written testimony, but I'd like to support a lot of what people have said along the way. A couple of exceptions. Bonnie Joe with the Industrial Hemp Association. I'm not really in support of hemp being a part of our regulated market and their products. There's a lot of untested substances in those things as a result of those conversions I think need a deeper dive into, so I'm not in support of that at all. I've heard a couple of recent ones about we've been at this a long time and we just need to pass it. I couldn't disagree more. If there's questions and stuff that's undiscovered or we don't know, then we need to take the time to figure it out before we pass something like this, because it's going to affect upwards of 70% of the people that are involved in this industry. And those are people. There's people attached to those businesses. It's not inanimate objects. Those are people's livelihoods and lives. So I want to voice my support for the Washington Sun and Craft Growers. They put in a lot of legwork and a lot of time, more time than I have, to develop this. They've given you guys some great ideas how we could move forward right now and make some good changes and keep this going. I believe the small business economic impact study, while awesome and a great thing to do, I do think it fell short of diving deep enough into the the economic impacts of this CR. I think there's some costs that are going to go way up and put a lot of folks out of business, and that scares the heck out of me. Third-party testing. The ability for people to choose their own test samples is ludicrous. The bad actors are going to exploit this. They're going to use this, and we're going to end up with a lack of confidence in the products that are on the shelves in the marketplace. Last thing I want to see. I've provided some ideas in my written testimony. Thank you very much for your time, and keep up the good work, Kathy. Thank you.
Dave, thanks for your comments. And the last person we have signed up is Greg Harrison.
Chair Greg Harrison has sent me an email, said he was having a little trouble connecting. So I don't see him online with us today, but Jeff Newton from a couple speakers ago has been able to join us online.
Oh, okay, great. Then we'll go to you, Jeff. Jeff Newton, are you with us?
Okay, are you there?
Oh yeah, you bet.
I'm sorry, I haven't used this app before, so I'm just figured out it was muted. But well, I think everything that I would have to say has been stated today, but some I'm against and some I'm for. I do think that pesticide testing is very important. I do think that the lot size of 50 pounds is, although it was probably well intentioned to save money, I'm not sure how that's going to play out in the end because of the economics for labs. And I heard what Tanya from Confidential said, or Confidence Analytics said. So that would be interesting to see. I think that maybe a 30-day reprieve to look at it closer to the details for the economics as well as the process of collecting the samples would be a good idea. One thing that I heard Tanya say that I completely agree with, if I understand what she was saying correctly, is that I think it's very important for labs to have access to clean product that's coming in. You know, when it goes through one lab and is passed on to another, I don't know that that's clean product, and I don't know that there's any way to track and make sure that that product actually even came from the farm that it said it was from. If the farms were able to submit samples directly, whether it's by third party choosing that sample or by that farm choosing it, I think that's important because once you send it off to a processor, for instance, or to anybody, you don't know if the sample that they have sent in for the pesticide testing is really yours or not. And in addition, you don't know if the lab is receiving product that's clean or if their cleaning processes are proper. So I have no problem with pesticide testing, but you know, I think there are a few more details to work out. So I would like to see there be another 30 days that we could talk about it. Unfortunately, I just found out about the issue because I'm not that informed, I guess, on this topic about 4 days ago, or else I might have more insight into it.
Okay, thank you. And that closes the public hearing on our marijuana quality control rules. I do want to thank everybody who testified. Keeping it concise was good. We heard a lot of people and some good questions from all sides. I appreciate that it was delivered in constructive ways. It was just good to hear people from all sides of this issue. We now will take this back, and it's an important piece of the rulemaking. And I know that Kathy and Jeff Kildall are not just listening now, but will follow up with all the written testimony to see what we can do. I have some questions that I will follow up with staff as well, and we're going to stay engaged on it. So again, thanks to everybody who took the time today to do that. And if there's somebody listening who didn't sign up and wanted to talk, please do submit testimony in writing as soon as you can. We are to the part of the agenda where we have general comments. We've got several people signed up. I'm going to go ahead and keep it at 4 minutes, but it's going to be a hard 4 minutes. So you're going to be cut off at the end of 4. You'll get a warning at 3.5 minutes with 30 seconds left. I ask you again to be concise, state your name and affiliation for the record. Please be respectful and listen for when that warning comes. The first up is Sami Saad.
Chair Sammy did register to speak, but is not online today.
Okay, moving to Peter Manning.
Hello.
Morning.
You guys see me?
Yeah, you bet. Hear you and see you good. How are you?
To thank Mr. Postman, the board, the head of the board, and Ali for holding this meeting today. I have a couple of issues. Hey, I just want to point out one thing. Social equity is important. Today we were at the meeting, and I sat back and I watched it. We got to make that more diversified. We need to have more participation by people of color in these meetings, talking about these different issues that they're going through. We don't have any black. We have 2 black growers. We have 3 retailers. I mean, I truly believe David Postman and Ali Garrett can bring about social equity. I think when I met Governor Inslee back in 2020, he said he was going to make changes, and I see those changes now. Inslee, I believe, is doing a great job as far as pushing this social equity agenda. I'm pleased with the board. I don't have any gripes with the board. I think you guys are on track from Black Excellence Cannabis viewpoint, where we stand in our constituents, which we have a rather large constituency. I just want to say that we believe in you guys. So we're behind you. We're going to support you because I think you guys can make it happen. So you guys are new at this. You guys have done a lot of stuff so far, and it's beautiful. Let me see. I have to comment on some of these. I don't know where some of these new groups come from that really don't have a background on social equity issues. I've been fighting the cause since 2014, 2015. I'm well entrenched in this battle, in this fight for social equity. Like I tell everybody, let Google testify as far as who's who. Go look in social equity and see who's been there from the beginning till now. Black Excellence Cannabis has been there. We helped at some point draft or help to write HB 2870. We're sincere about this. We think you guys are doing a fine job, and you guys have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Appreciate your comments. Next signed up is Marilyn Olson.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I signed up to talk under the WAC 314-55-101, but as long as I get to talk, that's fine.
You go ahead and we'll make sure it's included in our comments on the rules too. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Marilyn Olson. I'm the co-founder and scientific director of Integrity Labs. We've been in business for since about 2014. And I've also written my testimony, emailed it to you. There's a number of problems with this. One of the things is that testing should always be called quality assurance testing. Quality control is actually a subset under quality assurance testing. We're definitely for pesticide testing and would like safe products for our consumers. We believe that the consumer safety should be maintained, not relaxed. When we increase the size of the lot, I feel like that's relaxing the testing. When you think about it in terms of pounds or grams of product. 50 pounds is a huge amount. According to the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Control Board economic impact statement, 99.3% of the producers and processors are small businesses with under 50 employees. This size change will only help the large businesses. A 50-pound lot of cannabis is around 23,000 grams. And when you think about doing one suite of tests, one potency, one microscreen, water activity, mycotoxin, and foreign matter, for that amount of cannabis product, that doesn't give us data points to really come up with what the actual number is. That's just way too much. Even if we go down to 10-pound lots, that's actually over, it's close to 5,000 grams, which is also too much. So why not stay with the 5 grams and change the way we test pesticides separately? I think due to the decrease in sample volumes that the labs will receive, yeah, we're definitely going to have to increase costs. And also the cost for instrumentation for pesticides is just an extravagant amount, which a lot of the labs won't be able to go with. Pesticide testing should have its own lot size, we believe, and possibly should be tested separately. Let's see. We're also concerned that the small business impact statement did not include certified laboratories. When I asked about this, I was told by 2 different LCB employees that they do not regulate the laboratories. Well, if they don't regulate the laboratories, who does? Because a lot of rules seem to be being made for us, and yet you don't regulate us. So who do we speak to? Who are our regulators? There's a number of things that need to be addressed in the WAC. Third-party sampling needs to be incorporated. The high residual solvent levels should not be in existence. What do you mean by, on page 8, 2E in the WAC, what do you mean by test as is or as received? Does that mean that we cannot homogenize the sample before we test? What exactly does that mean? We think that perhaps the pesticide testing should be tested at farm level or at harvest level, like most crops in the state of Washington, apples and such. There's just a lot more work to be done with this, and I really appreciate being able to send my comments in. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sorry we got you in the wrong list, but glad you had the chance.
No problem.
Great, thank you. And Micah Sherman.
Hi. Again, for the record, my name is Micah Sherman, and I'm actually here with my WCIA hat on, which is an alliance of integrators that have been working on making sure that our CCRS system and the interoperability between licensees has remained smooth and operational. And I've been asked to make a comment about the reporting requirements for labs require that within 24 hours, they report the data that they've gathered, but there's a 1-week reporting requirement for licensees. So we're starting to see a lot of conflicts in the CCRS system as a result of this lag between the requirements on one side and the requirements on the other. So we would ask that it, in the same way that there was an interpretive statement made about the 16-digit ID code, we might be able to do something that would allow the labs to report on the same cycle as the licensees and avoid a lot of the reporting conflicts that are resulting from that. And happy to follow up with anybody on the details of that situation. But it would be very helpful to make that all work well. And the WCIA has done a lot to make sure that things still work while we make this transition and are available to help directly as needed.
Okay, great. Micah, yeah, if you could just send me a short note on it, although I'm sure they're listening now, but we can make sure the CCRS team takes a look at it.
Great, we'll do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Jeremy Moberg.
Hello. For the record, I'm Jeremy Moberg, owner of Cannabis Farms and board member of the WSCA. Thanks for the opportunity, board members Postman and Garrett, to comment again. I, in this comment, would like to commend the LCB on some work that I think has been very beneficial to the industry, and that is surrounding canopy enforcement. We, for a long time in this industry, the honest players that have stayed within canopy have been at a real disadvantage when for years there seemed to have been an allowance of mega canopy without any enforcement action. We saw various enforcement actions this last fall that I think got a lot of these people's attention. We also saw the LCB Enforcement Division put out some clarification on how they are going to measure it, and a little bit of, I think, admission that maybe they had not paid as close attention to this issue as they should have. So I think the industry has got the memo. I think it would be helpful if more clarification was put out to the industry ahead of harvesting, so that anybody that has, I mean, some of these places have 4 acres, 10 acres, you know, and if they're really compliant, they're going to be using a sliver of their pen that they have allowed for canopy. So this is progress that was much needed. I think it's going to have an immediate, or not an immediate effect, but a pretty good effect on overproduction and the problems that causes. So I'm just here to say that our association and the industry appreciates the LCB's work on this issue. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. We'll make sure the enforcement and education team hear your comments. Last person I have signed up is Jim Mcrae.
Hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Couple of things. First of all, I enjoyed your op-ed the other day in the Tacoma paper. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for pointing out the ongoing dishonesty that is coming out of at least one of the industry organizations out there. It's nice to see folks in public life not just sitting back and taking it when it's put out there, particularly when it's inappropriately put out there. So I commend you on that. 2 other things. With respect to, you got me thinking about the board function when I read your op-ed the other day, and when I've read some of the criticisms and the legislation that's out there to propose a change, and got me thinking a little bit about what the board does. And a couple of things have come up today that bring that to me puts clarity on a couple of questions. One of them is in the quality assurance rules. There's a mention on page 5 of the 157-page packet about how in November of 2020, there was a hearing held on the rules, the CR 102 at the time. We thought we were going to be getting to final rules. And following the hearing, the board reviewed all feedback and determined that a new approach was necessary. Now, obviously, you were not here then, Chair Postman. Russell Hauge is gone. So Ms. Garrett board member Garrett is the only person that was in that, session when the decision was made to take a different approach. Well, we see the result of that. Obviously, the board does important things when you see that. The board also does things that they did today of approve all kinds of stuff and vote on things. It's not always approval, I suspect. But if I look at the thing that was done earlier today on pesticide action levels, the CR 101, if you look at page 3 of that, reasons why the rules may be needed. And it basically says 2 things being done. Rulemaking is needed to update information in the existing rule language. I mean, that's just a tautology. It's circular. It doesn't add any extra information. And that updated rule language regarding remediation of marijuana that has failed quality assurance testing. There's no statement about why that is needed. It's a statement about what is going to be done, what is being proposed to be done. And it says updated rule change to change the term quality assurance testing to quality control testing. which again, it never says why. And I fail to see that in any of the materials. It's just saying, here's what we're going to do. So a piece of advice would be, if you're going to vote on things, and particularly if you're going to vote unanimously that it's approved and all that, and there's stuff that right up there might just ask the question of, there's this section that says why these rules might be necessary, and it doesn't really say, to my reading, anything about necessity. You can read that quality assurance testing is needed to be consistent with the rules that are still underway, but those aren't in place yet. I would hate people to see it as you're just a rubber stamp organization. You know, in terms of the board oversight, I have in the past suggested that there might be problems with oversight of agency operations.
Jim, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Dustin. I really do believe that the board, as my understanding of it, plays a crucial role in just the proximal oversight of the agency. And I think from what I've seen, you do a decent job of it. You certainly try to. But I do believe you also give staff a little too much leeway at times to do things like put out a bunch of reasons that have no reasons in them, and then sign off on that stuff unanimously. So thank you very much. I, again, liked your op-ed. I hope WACA doesn't have their way this session.
Great, thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. That is the last person we had signed up. So we're at the end of our agenda. Unless Member Garrett has anything to add before we close down, and if not, then we will adjourn the board meeting for February 2nd. Thank you all very much. Really do appreciate the constructive input. We heard from people on all sides of this, and we're going to now go ahead and keep working on it, led by Jeff Kildall. So thanks to him and Kathy and to all of you. Have a great day.